The jungle's whisper and the wounded girl asterisk. The jungle was alive with sounds that never stopped. Insects buzzed like tiny machines, and strange birds screamed high in the trees. But under all of that, there was a silence that didn't belong. It was the kind of silence that meant something was wrong. Something or someone had entered the jungle who wasn't welcome. Kai stumbled through thick vines, blood trailing down his arm. His breathing was heavy. And every step he took left a mark in the wet ground. The trees were so tall, they blocked the sky completely. Sunlight came only in small, broken beams, like golden knives cutting through shadow. He didn't know where he was anymore. Only that he had escaped death back at the human outpost, and now he was somewhere no human was supposed to be, up in the canopy. Two golden eyes watched him from the leaves. Seika crouched like a hunter, her skin marked with tribal paint and dust. She had seen humans before, too many. They came with loud boots and louder guns. They poisoned the rivers and burned trees for their machines. Her mother had died screaming when one of them shot her. So when Seika saw this one, bleeding and weak, her first thought was to let the jungle take him. But something strange happened. The jungle didn't reject him. The vines didn't strike. The roots didn't rise. The beasts didn't chase. They watched him the same way Seika did, with curiosity instead of hate. Suddenly, a deep growl came from behind the trees. Seika stiffened as the leaves rustled and a black shadow slid across the forest floor. It was the Nightclaw, the deadliest beast in the jungle. Its fur shimmered like oil, and its teeth were as long as a man's finger. One slash from its claws could cut through armor like paper. No one survived a Nightclaw attack. No one. Kai froze, his eyes locking on the creature. He didn't run. He knew running was useless, so he stood, wounded and breathing hard, staring into the predator's glowing violet eyes. The Nightclaw sniffed the air, its muscles tense and ready to kill. But then it did something no one expected. It walked closer, slowly, and stopped right in front of Kai. It didn't roar or bite. It lowered its head and made a low rumbling sound, almost like a purr. Then the beast turned its body sideways and pressed against Kai. As if guarding him, Seika's heart pounded. Like war drums, she had seen this ritual before, but only in stories. The beast had chosen him. The jungle had accepted him. She didn't understand how or why, but she knew what it meant. Kai collapsed to his knees. Not because of fear, but because his legs finally gave out. The beast stood beside him like a silent protector. Then the jungle moved again, and Seika disappeared into the trees. She would not let him die now, not after what she saw. She had to know the truth. When Kai opened his eyes, he was no longer in the mud. He was inside a hidden cave, glowing with soft green moss. His wounds were wrapped in silk-like threads, and a small fire crackled near his feet. He turned his head slowly and saw her, the girl with gold eyes and sharp silence. She said nothing, just stared at him from across the fire. Her hand rested on a blade, but she didn't draw it. Kai tried to speak, but his throat was dry. "Thank you," he whispered. She blinked, surprised, then stood and tossed him a water skin. He drank, then coughed, then managed a weak smile. "Who are you?" he asked. Seika didn't answer. She only said one thing, in a voice full of warning and wonder. "The beast chose you." The fire popped, and somewhere outside, the jungle roared again. But inside the cave, a strange peace settled between them. Seika didn't know it yet, but the moment she saved him, her life changed forever. Because no one escapes the jungle's judgment, and no one is chosen by the Nightclaw without purpose. The mark of the beast, the fire burned low inside the mossy cave, casting soft green light on the walls. Kai lay awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to the jungle breathe outside. Each sound was different from Earth, deeper, heavier, like the planet itself was alive. His shoulder ached where the beast's breath had touched his skin. And his mind kept circling back to the same question: why did it spare him? Saika sat near the entrance, her blade resting across her knees. She hadn't slept, not even blinked for long. She watched the human carefully, as if expecting him to change, to transform into the monsters her tribe feared. But he didn't snarl or shout, didn't curse or demand. He just looked tired, confused, and very human. Outside the cave, the Nightclaw remained still. Its body curled near the stones like a sleeping shadow, but its ears twitched at every movement Kai made. It didn't growl, didn't hiss, just stayed. That was the second sign the beast had marked him. Saika knew what that meant. Tidge chose him as bonded in the old jungle legends. The Nightclaw would only follow one being in its lifetime. Not even her tribe's greatest warrior had earned that loyalty. But this outsider had, without speaking a word to the jungle. Kai tried to sit up, groaning softly. His chest was bandaged with green fiber and warm paste that smelled like burnt wood. Saika moved closer, not to help, but to watch. "You're lucky," she said coldly. "Most who bleed in this jungle feed the roots." Kai gave a tired smile. "Guess I'm not most," he said, then winced again. "I don't remember anything after the beast came. You should be dead," she replied, "but you're not. Because it protected you." She pointed to his shoulder where the beast had pressed against him. There was a faint glowing line, now a mark shaped like a curved claw. Kai saw it and frowned, touching it lightly. "It left something," he whispered. Saika nodded. "The jungle chose you," she said. "You carry its breath now, Kai." Didn't understand, but he knew she believed it, and in this place. Her belief mattered more than his logic. Saika stood and stepped outside the cave. The air was humid and thick with mist. The Nightclaw opened one eye as she passed, then closed it again. She knelt by the stream and filled a carved bowl with water and green berries. She wasn't sure why she was feeding him. Maybe because the jungle had spared him. Or maybe because something in his eyes wasn't like the others. Back inside, Kai took the bowl from her hands without a word. He drank and chewed slowly, tasting bitter and sweet at the same time. He looked at her again, this time not with fear, but something gentler. "What's your name?" he asked. She hesitated, then said Saika. He nodded and replied, "I'm Kai." Silence fell again, but it was different now. Not cold, not sharp, just quiet. Like the jungle was listening. Later, Saika led him out of the cave and into the deeper jungle. The Nightclaw followed them both. Padding silently across the vines, birds screamed from above, and glowing bugs zipped through the trees. Kai moved carefully, copying her steps. Watching how she breathed, where she touched, she showed him which plants healed and which ones killed with a single drop. He listened without interrupting. He didn't act like he knew better, and for the first time, she didn't feel anger. Around a human, at one point, they stopped near a broken tree where giant mushrooms grew. Saika knelt and whispered something into the roots. Kai asked what she said. "I told the tree your name," she said. "Now the jungle knows you." He blinked, unsure how to respond, but then he noticed something strange. The vines nearby moved. Not toward him, but away from his feet, giving him space. Even the plants had accepted him. That night, as they returned to the cave, the sky above cracked with distant thunder. Storms were coming, and with them, something worse. Kai could feel it, and so could the Nightclaw, which lifted its head and growled into the wind. Saika looked toward the horizon, where smoke had started to rise. Humans were coming, but not like him. These would not earn the jungle's trust. They would burn it, just like before. She turned to Kai and said softly, "If they find you, they'll kill you." Kai nodded, already knowing, "But if they find you with me," she added, "they'll kill us both." The Nightclaw stood and stepped between them, its eyes glowing again. Kai placed a hand on its fur, and it didn't flinch. I don't run anymore, he said quietly, and the jungle listened. The hunters come asterisk. The jungle was not quiet anymore. Even the roots seemed restless, twisting harder into the soil as if they felt danger. Birds stopped singing, and the nightclaw's fur bristled every time the wind changed. Seika could feel it. Something unnatural was coming, and she knew exactly what it was. Humans, not like Kai, but the other kind. The kind with helmets, scanners, and loud machines. The kind who didn't ask before shooting. The kind who burned down trees just to build fences. They were close now, maybe a day away. Kai stood on a moss-covered rock, looking toward the smoke rising in the sky. He had seen that color before. It wasn't a campfire. It was a signal. I think they're tracking me, she said, voice low. Seika narrowed her eyes. They're tracking the mark, she whispered. What mark? He asked. The one the beast gave you, she said, pointing to his glowing shoulder. The jungle knows you now, but so do your kind. The nightclaw growled and paced in a circle. Sniffing the wind, it moved like it already knew where the enemy was. Seika touched the beast's side gently, and it calmed, but her hands were trembling. I told you they'd come, she said. They never let go of what they want. Back at her village, drums echoed through the trees. The tribe had seen the smoke, too. They gathered under the old roots, warriors holding spears tipped with poison. When Seika returned with Kai at her side, the reaction was instant. Gasps, shouts, and weapons drawn. Why is the human here? One shouted, he carries fire in his blood. Another said, but then the nightclaw stepped into view. It stood tall behind Kai, its violet eyes glowing under the canopy. Silence swept through the crowd like cold water. No one moved, not even the chief. The beast let out a single low sound, not a growl, but a deep breath. It was the sign. The mark was true. The jungle had chosen Kai. Now they had no choice but to listen. The tribal chief, a tall woman with bark-colored skin and leaf armor, stepped forward. Her name was Vara, and her stare could cut deeper than any blade. You bring death to our door, she said to Kai. Why should we let you live among us? Kai looked her in the eyes and didn't blink, because I didn't choose the jungle. He said, it chose me. Vara studied him in silence, then turned to Seika. This is your decision. She said, you bring him, you answer for him. Seika felt the weight of her people's stares pressing down on her back. She nodded once, firm and calm. I will, she said, but if he turns, I'll stop him myself. Vera raised her hand, and the weapons lowered, but peace was thin as mist and twice as fragile. That night, while the tribe prepared for war, Seika sat beside Kai under a giant tree. Its trunk glowed with old runes, carved by generations of protectors. She spoke quietly. They will not protect you if it comes to battle. I don't expect them to, Kai replied. He looked at her, his voice steady, but I will protect them if I can. Seika didn't speak, but something in her chest softened. This man had no weapon, no armor, and no promise of safety. Yet he stood among enemies with calm eyes and steady breath. He reminded her of something she had forgotten. Hope, far away. The ground vibrated with the first human step. The hunters were near, wearing steel boots, carrying laser rifles, and tracking heat signals. Their leader, Captain Drake, held a blinking scanner in his hand. Signals strong. He said, he's marked, just like HQ said. One soldier asked, should we bring him in alive? Drake smirked. Alive if easy, dead if not. They didn't see the vines parting silently above them. Didn't hear the low breathing of something ancient hiding in the trees. The jungle had heard them, and it was not happy back in the village. Seika and Kai heard the first mechanical whine in the distance, the sound of drones. The beast stood suddenly, muscles tight, ready to strike. They're here, Seika whispered. Kai nodded and picked up the only thing he had, a sharp stone. "Then we fight," he said. The jungle rustled in approval. The jungle's trial. The sun never truly shined inside the jungle, but that morning the light felt heavier than usual. Something ancient stirred beneath the roots, not just fear, but judgment. The jungle was ready to decide if Kai was truly worthy. Seika stood before the tribe elders with her arms crossed tight. Her voice was steady, but her chest felt like a drum. "He didn't come to take from us," she said. "He bled, he learned, he listened." But the tribe wasn't convinced by words. They wanted proof. Vara, the tribe's chief, rose slowly from her seat, carved into a massive stone root. She pointed her spear toward Kai, then let him face the jungle's trial. She said, "If it accepts him, so will we." No one spoke for a while, not even Seika, because the jungle's trial was simple and deadly. Survive one night alone in the heart of the Black Hollow. No fire, no blade, no help, just your mind, your spirit, and your will to live. Kai didn't hesitate. He looked into Seika's eyes once before stepping forward. "I accept," he said. The tribe led him to the edge of the forest where the trees grew too close, where light went to die and creatures never slept. They left him there with nothing but a drop of water and a word of farewell. Seika watched him vanish between the vines. She didn't cry, but her fingers gripped her knife too tightly. The nightclaw stayed behind, growling softly, as if it wanted to go with him. But it couldn't. This trial had to be his alone, inside the Black Hollow. The air was thick like oil. Kai moved slow, careful not to trigger roots that might strangle him. He heard whispers that weren't words, felt eyes he couldn't see. The jungle tested everything: his memory, his balance, even his breath. He found a tree with sharp fruit and carved it open with a rock. He used sticky sap to cover his wounds from old scratches. He slept high in the branches while something howled below. At one point, a snake with crystal scales wrapped around his leg. Its eyes flashed like lightning. Kai didn't scream. He held still and whispered something he didn't even understand. The snake loosened and vanished into the dark. Elsewhere, Seika sat by the edge of the hollow all night. She lit no fire, made no sound. Her heart beat in rhythm with the jungle. The elders watched her but said nothing. Even Vera felt the weight of what this moment could mean. Dawn came slow and gray. Mist rolled in through the trees, and then movement. Kai emerged from the shadows. Shirt torn, face scratched, barefoot and dirty, but alive. He carried something in his hands. A blood fruit, rare and sacred. The fruit only grew in the hollow, surrounded by venomous wasps that no one dared face. Yet he held it, untouched. Pulsing with soft red light, gasps broke through the tribe like lightning splitting the sky. He dropped to one knee and held the fruit toward the elders. "I didn't come to survive," he said. Breathing hard, "I came to understand." Vara stepped forward slowly, her eyes scanning every inch of him. Then she turned to the crowd and raised her hand. "The jungle has spoken," she said. "He is one of us now." The nightclaw roared from the side and raced toward Kai. But it didn't attack. It rubbed its head against his chest and lay at his feet like a loyal friend. Children ran forward, touching his arms, whispering his name. Even the trees seemed to lean closer, welcoming him back. Seika finally stepped forward. Her eyes locked with his. "You passed," she said. Kai smiled barely. He replied. She didn't smile back, but her eyes were warmer now. That night, the tribe held a quiet feast under glowing mushrooms. No drums, no dancing, just respect. The kind given only to those who bled for the jungle and survived. But far beyond the trees, the hunters had made their camp. Captain Drake wiped blood from a knife and looked at his map. "Tomorrow, we strike," he said. "They won't even see it coming." The jungle may have accepted Kai, but war was already on its way. The betrayal beneath the leaves asterisk, the stars above the jungle flickered behind thick clouds. Even the moonlight seemed afraid to shine that night. A cold wind blew through the canopy. But it wasn't just weather. It was warning. Something was wrong. Deeply wrong, Kai couldn't sleep. The Nightclaw circled the edge of the village with slow steps, its body tense and restless. Seika stood watch with a spear in hand, eyes fixed on the trees that didn't sway. They both felt it. Danger wasn't coming, it was already here. Earlier that day, a small boy from the tribe had found something near the river. A metal shard, smooth and glowing blue. Not natural, not wild, not from this planet. It was Terran tech, and it was active. Seika smashed the shard with a stone, but it was too late, high above. Satellites locked on the signal, far beyond. The jungle's edge, Captain Drake smiled as the tracker pulsed green. "We found him," he said to his squad. "Gear up. We move at first light." What no one knew was that the signal hadn't activated on its own. Someone had turned it on. A traitor was among them. One of the tribe had called the hunters. That night Kai sat alone under the wisdom tree, the same one Seika had once whispered his name to. Now its bark felt cold, its leaves still. He heard footsteps and turned to see Vara, the chief, standing there. "I warned you," she said calmly. "Your kind always brings the fire." Kai stood up slowly. "I didn't turn on that beacon," he said. "I've never wanted to bring anyone here." Vera stepped closer, her expression unreadable. "But someone did," she whispered. "And now they will come with weapons." Not questions, before more could be said. A loud boom echoed through the trees. The ground shook and fire exploded near the riverbed. Birds flew screaming into the air, and the jungle lit up with red light. The hunters had arrived, and they weren't hiding anymore. Mercenaries in black armor stormed through the foliage. Weapons raised, drones buzzed overhead, scanning, locking, targeting. The tribe scrambled, elders grabbing children, warriors grabbing spears, but the jungle moved, slower than steel. And the enemy came fast. Seika ran through smoke and flame, coughing, eyes burning. She saw one of her people fall to a stun blast, another hit by a net that pulled tight like a spider's trap. She didn't care about Warrenly. One thing mattered. Where was Kai? He wasn't fighting. He was running toward the flames. He wasn't trying to escape. He was looking for her. And when he found her, trapped under a broken wooden pillar, he didn't stop to think. He lifted it with a scream, pulling her free, just as a drone fired behind him. They rolled down a slope, crashing through vines and roots. The Nightclaw leaped from the darkness, slashing two drones in midair before landing beside them. Blood on its claws, fury in its growl. It would not let them be taken, but the hunters had come prepared, a sonic weapon fired from the trees. And the Nightclaw shrieked in pain. It collapsed, shivering, its body locked by invisible force. Kai lunged to cover it, screaming at the attackers, "Stop! You don't understand what you're doing?" Captain Drake stepped forward, helmet off, eyes cold. "Oh, I understand," he said. "I'm reclaiming stolen property." Seika hissed like a wild cat. "This is not your world," she spat. Drake raised his weapon and aimed at her chest. "No," he said, "but it's about to be." Kai stepped in front of her just as the trigger clicked, and something exploded in the sky from the canopy above. A storm of vines shot downward, glowing with ancient power. The jungle had awakened. And it was angry. Roots pulled weapons from hands, branches cracked ships in half. Beasts charged from the fog, howling in rage. Even the air seemed thicker hot, alive, and screaming. Kai dragged Seika toward a stone altar deep in the heart of the village. The place where spirits were called and names carved into roots. There, under the gaze of ancestors, they stood together. The Nightclaw limped beside them, growling through pain, and the jungle whispered their names. The war had just begun, and this time the forest would fight back. The War of Two Worlds fire danced across the jungle like a wild beast. Trees screamed as flames licked their branches. Roots tore from the ground, twisting in pain and rage. This was no longer just a forest, it had become a battlefield, a war. Between metal and earth, Captain Drake marched through the smoke with a pulse rifle in hand. Behind him, mercenaries advanced in tight formation, armored, heartless, ready to kill. Above them, drones buzzed like angry wasps, scanning heat, life, and movement. But they didn't see what was waiting beneath their feet. The jungle was alive. Vines curled like snakes and wrapped around ankles. Trees shifted with strange growls, dropping. Branches like clubs, even the air grew thick and heavy. Choking the human invaders slowly, still, they pushed forward, powered by greed and orders. Seika ran between the trees with her spear, glowing faintly. Every step she took felt like thunder. Every breath tasted like smoke. She had never seen her home like this, live and dying at the same time. Kai followed close behind, holding a salvaged rifle from a fallen soldier. He didn't fire unless he had to. He fought with his eyes open, his mind focused, and his heart in the right place. The Nightclaw moved ahead like a silent blade. It leaped through fire, tearing down drones with one swipe. Blood marked its fur, but its spirit was unbroken. It was no longer just a beast, it was a symbol. The jungle fought harder with every second. Roots pulled mercenaries into the ground. Branches blocked gunfire and crushed machines. Animals joined the war creatures that had never before worked together, but now they were one. Captain Drake growled into his comms, "We're being overrun." One voice answered back, "They're using the forest like it's part of their army." "No," Drake replied, eyes narrowing, "they are the army." Kai and Seika reached the sacred ridge overlooking the old stone altar. Their elders chanted around glowing roots, calling on ancient forces. Seika joined them, touching the bark with her palm. Her voice joined the chant, and the jungle answered. A burst of green energy shot upward. It spread through the trees like a wave. Guns jammed, drones dropped, radios fell silent. The invaders were blind and deaf now. Kai took this chance and led a charge. He moved with warriors. Not as a stranger, but as one of them. They struck fast, hitting the enemy where they least expected. Kai tackled a soldier, disarmed him, and pushed him into a net of waiting vines. He was no longer just a survivor. He had become a defender. Drake snarled and charged toward the altar. He kicked through vines, shot at trees, and climbed the ridge with fire in his eyes. But when he reached the top, he saw Seika standing there. And beside her, the Nightclaw roaring with a sound that shook the earth. "You lost," Seika said calmly. Drake raised his rifle with shaking hands, but before he could pull the trigger, the roots rose from the ground and wrapped around him. He was lifted off the earth like a rag doll and dragged toward the jungle's heart. Screaming, cursing, and forgotten. When silence returned, the fire died slowly. Ash floated through the air like snow. The jungle had bled, but it had not fallen. Kai dropped to one knee beside the Nightclaw. Checking its wounds, the beast licked his hand gently and rested its head on the moss. Seika knelt beside him, her eyes soft but strong. "You did what no human ever has," she said. "You fought with us, not against us." Kai looked up at her, dirt on his face, blood on his shirt, but peace in his eyes. "I fought for home," he replied. And in that moment, the jungle grew quiet again, not because it was over, but because it had accepted him completely. Above the ridge, where trees reached toward the stars, new vines began to grow, and deep within the roots, the jungle whispered his name. The choice of the beast *. Days passed since the last shot was fired. The jungle had stopped screaming. but it still watched with quiet eyes. Ashes fed the soil now, mixing with old roots and new life. Fallen branches had become bridges and burned. Trees were now homes for birds. The war was over, but the choices it left behind still burned in the hearts of many. Kai walked slowly through the village, not as a guest, not as an outsider. The people no longer looked at him with fear. They looked with respect, curiosity, even hope. Children ran beside him, laughing, some reaching out to touch the strange lines on his shoulder. The mark of the beast was no longer just glowing, it pulsed with life. Seika followed behind him, quiet, thoughtful. She had watched him grow from a lost wanderer into something the jungle had never seen before. Not a warrior, not a conqueror, but a bridge between two worlds. Her people had started planting again, singing again, but deep inside her, a question had started growing. Would he stay? At the edge of the village, a sleek Terran ship had landed. Not military, this one came in peace. A rescue team had picked up the broken signals days ago. Now they stood with open hands and soft voices. "You don't have to stay here," one said gently. "There's a whole world out there waiting for you." Kai didn't answer right away. He looked toward the jungle, where the trees swayed as if listening. The Nightclaw stood beside him again. Its body healed, but eyes cautious. It stared at the Terran ship like it was something that didn't belong. It turned its head to Kai and let out a soft rumble. That was the third sign. Kai understood without words. The jungle had given him a choice, not a command. He looked at Seika, who had stepped closer now. Her voice was low but firm. "If you want to go, I won't stop you," she said. "But if you stay, this world is yours too." He didn't speak. For a while, he stepped forward and placed a hand on the Nightclaw's back. The beast didn't flinch, leaned into him. Then he turned to the rescue team and shook his head. "I found where I belong," he said. "I'm already home." The Terrans didn't argue. They simply nodded, left supplies, and took off without drama. The ship vanished into the sky, leaving silence behind. Not an empty silence, but a peaceful one. Seika walked beside him as they returned to the village. Her fingers brushed his fore. A moment, not by accident. He looked at her, smiled, and gently took her hand, for the first time. Her grip didn't shake. It held firm, like roots around stone. Later that night, under the starlit sky, the tribe lit a ceremonial fire. Flames crackled as stories were told, stories of battles, of beasts, of the human who was not like the others. Kai sat with the elders now, his voice added to the songs. The Nightclaw lay beside him, not as a pet but as an equal. One elder carved a new symbol into the great root, a claw wrapped around a human hand below it. Two names side by side, Seika and Kai, bound not by blood, but by choice. The jungle listened to the chants, felt the warmth, and answered with wind through the leaves. Somewhere deep within the vines, a new life stirred. A future not born of fear but of trust. The human who was once feared had become a legend. And the alien girl who once hated his kind now stood beside him, not as protector and stranger, but as equals in a world that had changed because of them. And when the Nightclaw howled toward the stars, the jungle howled with it.